Hi, and welcome to the Red Zone Warriors Fantasy Football Show. I am your host, Rob, the Commish Smith, here along with my co-host, Jim, the Jimmer Kiernan, and last but certainly not least, our resident Lions fan, Jay Cushman Corsell. Damn, it's good to be back, boys. How are we today?
Great. I wish I had that cool of a fucking hat. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, if you're not joining us live on YouTube, the Jimmer is wearing a Stetson, I believe. Is that what it's called there, Jimmer?
It is called a Beaver Quality.
It's a cowboy hat. That's all you need to know.
That means all sorts of different things. All right. Well, don't forget to tweet us your fantasy football questions at Red Zone Warriors. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our news and notes segment where we cover the latest NFL news and notes, and we call it Around the NFL with the Cowboy Jimmer.
Sweet! All right, well, here's what we got. Raiders, they did something stupid. They signed Greg Little. Basically, that makes them, well, the Raiders. Moving on, LaShawn McCoy says he's better than AP. AP says McCoy needs to say it with a little more confidence if he truly believes it. Brandon Marshall, he signed a 4-year, $40 million extension and says that Alshon has the best hands in the NFL. We're going to go ahead and talk about that for sure, without a doubt, here soon. So we'll get to that one back in a second. Ray Rice will not be prosecuted by authorities and allegedly for knocking his fiancée and dragging her unconscious and limp body video, that whole situation. Come on, can we admit that that's kind of weird? The whole video in the elevator thing and dragging her out and whatever. He's not going to get in trouble, but Goodell could still do what he does because, well, he's the commish, and the commish does what he wants. Rob, how's that feel? You're the commish. You get to do what you want. And yeah, it feels fantastic. All right, Jerry Jones is in favor of the NFL expanding the playoffs. The sooner it's expanded, the better it will be for my Cowboys. Quote, unquote. Yeah, Jerry, sorry. You're screwed. All right, your team's still going to go 8-8 no matter what. And he's literally going to expand the playoffs till it goes 8-8 so we can get him in. Speaking of the Cowboys, former Cowboys, Miles Austin was picked up by the Gordon-less Browns. Josh Gordon apparently got picked up and moved on from elsewhere. Oh, wait, no, sorry. He smoked too much dope. And speaking of these things, Johnny Football apparently is getting sued for having a 3-inch penis. Come on. Did anyone else read this story? It is hilarious. For the record, here's, you know what? Here's the fireball. Thank you, Canada. Here's to Johnny Manziel's 3-inch penis. Cheers.
Hard to cheers to that, yeah.
Yeah, it's 9:05. Yes, I'm taking a shot already.
At least he's got a big arm.
All right, and last news notes. Marshawn Lynch, he opted not to join his team to visit the White House to meet the president. As the reigning Super Bowl champions, the White House does not serve Skittles, and apparently that's why he didn't go. It doesn't make sense. Well, hopefully he's a Republican, and that's why he didn't go. Anyways, moving on. Back to you, Rob.
All right, guys, so we're going to go into the wide receivers of 2014. We have gone ahead and ranked them and also tiered them. So we're going to get started here with what we all broke down as the Tier 1 wide receivers of this group. So when we look at Tier 1 wide receivers, we're talking about guys like Demaryius Thomas, Calvin Johnson, A.J. Green, Dez Bryant, Brandon Marshall, those types. We've all gone ahead and ranked them, so we'll be discussing the differences in our ranks. So we're going to go ahead and start with who's been the number one guy for several years now, Mr. Calvin Johnson. ADP, of course, has him first in PPR going off the board. The Jimmer also has him first going off the board. But this is kind of the year some people think he might fall off a little bit. So, Jimmer, what do we think about Calvin going into 2014?
My fantasy football name has been In Calvin I Trust. Okay, he's been my sole proprietor of my point scoring. Here's the deal. 4 of the last 5 seasons, he has over 1,000 yards. And in the one season he missed, he had 984, and he missed a few games. All right, so the guy is a rock of consistency. He's had over 100 yards per game for the last 3 years. Okay, you can't really ask much more from a player than that, other than the fact that, hey, you know what? 2 years ago, he had 122 catches. Can you remember the last time someone had 122 catches? I can't. I mean, we're gonna have to go to Jerry Rice status. Jones might have just spilled his beans on that one, but anyways, okay. Out of 21 fantasy pros, only one fantasy guy has him as the number 2 receiver this year, going into the draft. Literally, only one guy out of 21. So even, never mind us, never mind Rob, everyone else and their mother thinks that he's number 1.
I consider myself a pro, thank you.
And by the way, okay, the scoping the knee, like, holy crap, this is the most minor surgery in the world, and you feel 1,000 times better after it happens. I've seen it happen to 2 of my brothers, count them, 2, and I've seen it happen to my fireball shot. So with that, let's talk about who's behind him. Let's talk about who's behind Golden Tate, because he's the number 2 receiver. All right, and I'm sorry, I'm talking about your beloved Lions. They're still screwed. Chris Dunham is number 3. I don't care who you are. You're screwed if that's the case. Ryan Broyles coming off of a major microfracture surgery. Honestly, he has so much talent. I wish he would be better. And I've picked him up before. Ouch, that hurts. Kevin Ogletree, T.J. Jones, and Jeremy. I don't know who Jeremy Ross is. They might as well put my name on their list because it doesn't matter.
Tight end there, Jibber.
You might as well put my name on the list. I'm going to turn it over to the Lions, and they can talk about this because it doesn't make a difference.
Listen, Calvin is he's gonna go down soon, man. I mean, the guy gets injured every year. He has knee issues every year. You can say his scope was just a little deal. I'm a Lions fan, and I'm saying this.
He does not get hurt every year. Are you kidding me?
He's banged up every year.
He will still catch 80 passes a year. He does not get hurt every year.
80 passes does not put him as the number 1 wide receiver, brother.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. But
This is my
finish your thought about why these other receivers are going to make Calvin so much better.
No, I think he's saying there's nobody behind him, so he's going to put up big numbers still.
That's a possibility. What do you think about it?
All right, my big deal is that I've got him 4 on my board, and I'm surprised I haven't been killed or sent horrible text messages and Twitter feeds and whatnot. I mean, you got to love Calvin, but I think, he's still a consummate pro. He's still going to put up numbers. He finished number 5 last year in PPR. I'm putting him at number 4. So it's not out of the realm that he doesn't, stick with the number 1 spot by any stretch. But it's the knee, man. This knee thing has been just every, around game 12 or whatever, starts to really bother him. It's this consummate issue with his knee that's just not going away. I just don't have faith that he's going to necessarily play the whole season, and that's why I've kind of not. I think a lot of people still have him up because of his name recognition. And hell, I still have him in the top 5. He finished 5th last year, like I said. So I just don't have enough confidence in him going into this season to have him as my number 1 overall.
All right, final thoughts from the Jimmer on this one is, he's fully healthy. This is the first time in a while that he's been fully healthy. And number 2, the only thing I'm actually concerned about for him, and as a keeper of Calvin Johnson, here's the only thing I'm concerned about is the new offensive coordinator, the new coach. I'm a little worried about how many passes they're going to do this year. Because, I mean, come on, Stafford, throws for 5,000 yards without blinking? Who cares if he throws 40 picks? But just saying. Saying.
I hope you're right. I hope that Calvin stays healthy all season and catches 150 passes. Awesome.
No one's rooting against him, that's for sure. So
that would be great. So we're going to move on from Calvin, though.
Yeah. We're gonna go to one Mr. Julio Jones. This is a guy, there'll be several guys we talk about today that are coming off injuries that are kind of going into this season after missing multiple games. So we just got to kind of decide as a group where we want to put these guys. So definitely one of the upper echelon guys, top 5, top 3, top 2, top 1 potential, Julio Jones, as an ADP 6th in PPR coming off the board, so people aren't really falling off on him too much. Jay, you have him at 4th going into the season. What are your thoughts about Julio going into 2014?
Oh, look, you're right. Julio missed most of the 2013 season with an injured foot, and we all hate those lower extremity injuries. They kind of scare us a little bit going into the next season. But let's take a look back before he went down. His numbers in 5 games, he averaged 8.2 receptions and 116 yards. He was the top option in the offense. He's going to be the top option in the offense again this year for Matt Ryan. The coach of the Falcons, Mike Smith, says his focus is strictly on getting these guys ready for training camp. They're not worried about his injury. I actually kind of wondered, Rob, why you had him a little lower. I thought at one point you were a lot higher on him.
Yeah, I put him at number 7, which is just outside tier 1, and it has nothing to do with his ability. The guy's a beast. He's talented. He's maybe one of the most talented, if not the most talented wide receiver, just looking at, watching him play in the NFL. It's not that. It's strictly what you mentioned before. I mean, this guy isn't the healthiest of guys for sure, especially at a wide receiver position where you don't expect, too many injuries and missing too many games as opposed to running backs. He's going into only his 4th season, so he's still young and he's still already had all these injury issues. The biggest thing for me, I mean, he's coming off last year where he had a season-ending foot injury after week 5, and they had to put a screw in his foot, because to fix a stress fracture. And like you said, lower extremities issues really bother me. I mean, Hakeem Nicks has been plagued for years and years with these chronic foot problems. I just don't like it. It just makes me nervous. He may have the most upside of any wide receiver in the NFL, but for me, I'm just a little scared of him, and I wouldn't necessarily want him as my wide receiver 1, just because I'd rather pick an A.J. Green or somebody close to him, just because I have more confidence in their long-term health.
Yeah, I see Jim over here shaking his head.
The kid's elite. I mean, end of story. I'm sorry. I mean, the kid is an elite talent. I mean, I remember back in his Alabama days, he played through a hamstring injury for 2 years. I mean, the kid is going to play. He's going to put up numbers. I mean, we saw what he did in 5 games. Can you imagine what he's going to do the whole season and when the Falcons are actually relevant? Like, yeah, holy crap. They actually have a rebuilt defense, so they're actually going to compete against teams. I think he's in line for a huge season. Yeah. So, by all means, Rob, if you want to pass on, go ahead and give him to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely worth the risk. I think he's going to have 98 catches this year for right around 1,400, 1,500 yards, and probably 11 touchdowns. So that's where I think Julio Jones is going to be. Definitely worth a first-round pick. I'm going to be looking for him if he's not capped in my league. We're going to move on, though, to another guy here who some people might sleep on. Rob seems to be pretty high on him, Mr. Jordy Nelson in Green Bay. Rob, you think he's going to be the man over there this year or what?
Yeah, I really do. I'm super high on him, and Jim's been mocking me over text for several days now when he saw my rankings. But his ADP now is 11th in PPR. I've got him at 5th actually in the top 1 tier. I just think this is the year that he just completely just blows up. The guy has been a stud pretty much every season. You can get him like in the 3rd round consistently. I mean, I don't know if it's because he's white or what, but the guy just kills it. But he only goes in the 3rd round every year. Let's look at the number. Let's break this down. In 2013, he played 16 games. People think of Jordy, they think of kind of injury issues, but it's really not the case. Last year was the 4th time in his 6 years that he's played a full 16 games. So the guy plays. He's healthy. He had 85 receptions, which was a career high. He had over 1,300 yards, which was also a career high last year, and 8 touchdowns. And that's with only half the season with Aaron Rodgers. He had a 67.5% catch rate and a 10.43 yards per attempt, which is ranked him 5th among any wide receiver that had over 50 catches in the season last year. And again, that was with Aaron Rodgers only playing half of the season. When you break it down and look at what he did when the first 8 games when Aaron Rodgers was in there, he just posted absurd numbers. His catch rate was 72.2%. That is 2nd in the league of all wide receivers with over 35 receptions across the entire season. He averaged over 12 yards a target, which was 1st in the NFL with any wide receiver over 35 receptions. I mean, that is tremendous. And even after Aaron Rodgers left, with the likes of Seneca Wallace, Scott Tolzien, Matt Flynn, these guys, he was still way above the league average in both of those categories. So the guy, he's a beast. Aaron Rodgers loves him. He looks for him. He seeks him out. James Jones is now gone. Jermichael Finley may or may not come back. He's technically off the team now. You're going into your 2nd year with Eddie Lacy in that running game that has really opened up the offense. Aaron Rodgers will be 100% healthy. So the bottom line is, it's fantasy points. How many points is he going to put up for me, throughout the fantasy season? Jordy Nelson averaged 19.5 fantasy points in a PPR when Aaron Rodgers was in there the first 8 games of the season. That if you average that total over 16 games, he would have finished 4th last year in PPR. 4th. And just 10 points from the number 1 wide receiver, Demaryius Thomas. So I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be healthy all season. There's no reason to think not to. And Jordy Nelson is going to blow up. I've got him for 90 receptions, over 1,400 yards, and 11 touchdowns in 2014.
Wow. Jordy Nelson. I agree that he is going to be a very, very good wide receiver this year. I think it's going to be basically him and Randall Cobb's show. I don't see anybody else getting too many passes there. I don't know if I'd put him as high as 5th, but I've got him in the top 10. But Jim, I know that you do not like this pick at all. So,
dude, the only thing more fickle than Aaron Rodgers is the Democratic National Convention. I mean, come on, this is a joke. All right, the guy flakes. I mean, come on, seriously, you have Aaron Rodgers thrown to you. The guy is going to literally go week to week, and whoever gives him the best handy is going to give him the most passes. I mean, he doesn't make sense. He does not correlate. That's why I always stay away from Green Bay Packer wide receivers. I'm not saying he won't be good. He could very well end up in the top 10. Will he end up number 5? Not in this universe. Absolutely not. I completely disagree. But I think he's worth drafting. I think he's a great player. And if you want to draft him as your number 1 wide receiver, by all means, go for it. Because I'm not touching him.
Jim, I'd like to hear more about your experience with Aaron Rodgers' handies.
You know what? It was not very hard, and it was not very easy to come down.
All right.
Fair enough. All right, so as Jimmer mentioned in the news and notes segments, we would be talking about Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. So, Jimmer, you've got these guys. The ADP is 7th, 8th range in wide receivers. You've got them 6th and 7th, so you're just a little bit higher than ADP. What do you think about the most elite wide receiver tandem in the NFL going into 2014?
Yeah, honestly, my biggest thing with these two guys is who knows? I mean, quite frankly, Alshon Jeffrey could outperform Brandon Marshall, and it wouldn't scare me at all. I have them slightly higher because, you know what, Brandon Marshall is still elite. And let's talk about what happened with Brandon Marshall. Yes, he got that massive contract. He's got $40 million. All right, that's not to be wide receiver number 2 numbers. I mean, that's a lot of money. All right, Alshon's only getting better. Even Marshall knows that, and he's saying he's got better hands. And I think that whole offense is actually going to get more efficient. So I think both of these guys are actually going to go up further. Brandon Marshall's in the 100 catches category, so that's what makes him kind of elite, because when you think about PPR, points per reception in our league that we're in and what we're talking about, I mean, that astronomically changes his value. I mean, 100 catches, I mean, think about that. I mean, that's 20 more points than the next guy, sort of thing. So that automatically puts him in the top 10 range. Alshon is still in that rookie contract, but it's over at the end of the year. So what he's got to do, he's got to prove a lot this year. He's going to try and get every freaking catch within 10 yards of him coming into this next year. Do I think he can do another 100 receptions? Man, that's a great question. I think he's going to do everything in his power to get another 100 receptions. And we're talking about Alshon Jeffrey. 7 TDs was good. I don't know if he can duplicate that. I don't know if Brandon's going to snake a few more of those from him. And again, we've seen guys like Calvin Johnson, Jay, that literally can catch 5 TDs one season, and the next season they catch 18. So that's something kind of crazy. By the way, though, there is no one behind these guys in the depth chart, period, at all. So that's something to kind of consider. That's why I kind of think they're option A, B. So if you don't have one, get the other. So that's my theory on fantasy football. Last year, I drafted Brandon Marshall in the first round because he fell to me, and I thought he was going to be the number 2 wide receiver last year. He was very good. And Rob, if you remember, you and I made a little significant trade, and it might have involved Jamal Charles and Calvin Johnson because I needed a wide receiver 1. So keep that in mind when you're drafting Brandon Marshall or Alshon Jeffrey in a 10-man league.
I can't say anything bad about these guys, even though I really want to, because in all honesty, we can all feel the same way when we say fuck the Chicago Bears. They rot. But yeah, either one of these guys, I'll take either one of them as my wide receiver one. To be honest with you, I've got them going actually 6 and 8. Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, respectively. I would take either one in the first round and be happy with it. They're both going to be monsters this year, especially in PPR. But
Well, this is the thing. I mean, neither one of them are going to go in the first round. They're going to go in the second. It's just if you would take him as your wide receiver one or not. I read some good articles, and whatever this is worth, but Jay Cutler as a man crush on Brandon Marshall has for years, and they looked at when Cutler was in there throwing to both these guys versus when Josh McCown was in there throwing both of these guys, and Alshon's numbers were higher definitely when McCown was in there versus when Jay Cutler was. Jay Cutler is definitely the starting quarterback. If he doesn't get hurt, which he likely will at some point, he definitely goes to Marshall more. So, but I was thinking back when the ADP was a little different and Alshon was a little lower, I figured, if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather go with Alshon for a little better value than go with Marshall. But now that the ADP is 7th and 8th off the board, now it just comes down to, pick your poison, which guy do you want. So I would probably, I think Alshon might have higher upside than Marshall, but I might feel a little bit more comfortable going with Marshall knowing that Cutler is going to be their quarterback, for the foreseeable future. So
Alshon is a dynasty keeper.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe one of the best. So, all right, so we're going to move on to our Tier 2 wide receivers and discuss those here for a minute. So with Tier 2 guys, we're talking about the Randall Cobbs, the Antonio Browns, the Pierre Garçons, the Vincent Jacksons, the Wes Welkers, Larry Fitzgeralds, Michael Crabtree type guys. So we're going to cover some of those that we think the audience would want to hear about. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We talked about Jordy Nelson in that dynamic Green Bay offense with one of the most elite quarterbacks we've seen in a long time, Aaron Rodgers, throwing him the ball. Let's talk about the guy on the other side of the field, a little younger player, very dynamic, tons of upside, and that's one Mr. Randall Cobb. So ADP has Randall at 10th in PPR off the board. Jay, you have him 9th. What are your thoughts about Randall Cobb going into 2014, coming off kind of an injury-plagued season?
Well, exactly that. The injury was an issue. Good news, though, for people who are looking to draft Randall Cobb this year. The Packers want to take him out of the return game. That is excellent news. We do not want him in the return game. The only thing you might get out of that is if he scores a touchdown, and it's not going to matter. So out of the return game is good for his health. He gets to be fully devoted to the passing game, and I think he's a legit threat for 100 catches this season. Like we said, a broken leg was the story of his 2013 season, but prior to that injury in Week 6, this guy was picking up where he left off in 2012. He opened the year with back-to-back games with more than 100 yards. In 4 full games, he caught 25 passes, he gained 403 yards from scrimmage, and he scored twice. Then he took a low hit, had bad consequences. I don't think he's really injury-prone. It was a broken leg. As long as he lets it heal and does his freaking physical therapy, the guy's going to be fine. With a QB like Rodgers throwing to him, I think he's in a great position to throw up wide receiver 1 numbers this season. I think with James Jones leaving and Cobb fully healthy, I think we'll see a career season out of him.
Jimmer, do you have any thoughts on Mr. Cobb?
Going back to the same thoughts with just Aaron Rodgers in general, I'm just nervous. I don't know if I can bet on him being a top 10 guy, in my opinion. I think everything says that he will be. And so basically preseason and drafting-wise, you kind of got to believe he could be a top 10 guy. But, if he falls to me, I'll take him. But he's not a guy that I'm actively trying to draft.
Yeah, I think, to me, this is like a Denver offense. It's like a Saints offense, with James Jones gone and questionable stuff going on at tight end. These are the 2 main guys in that offense, and it can, Aaron Rodgers can definitely feed these guys both the ball. We've seen it in numerous offenses. They can both get 100 catches and have dynamic seasons. So because, Cobb's hasn't been in the league all that long, we can't say he's injury prone. A broken leg would have happened to anyone. It's a fractured bone that will heal and be completely fine. So better that than an Achilles or something. So I'm definitely high on him too. Jay's got him at 9th. I've got him at 10th. I think him and Jordy or could both be top 10 guys easily going into the season, especially with a guy like Rodgers throwing him the ball. So, yeah.
By the way, one thing I will add into the passing game is they just signed a kid named Colt Lyera. He's a tight end. The kid was a beast at Oregon, by the way. If he can stay out of trouble, he is a huge factor moving forward. I'm not saying this year, but I'm saying the year after. He could be a major fantasy player. We'll get into tight ends later, but just my little plug.
What is it with tight ends and having to stay out of trouble in the NFL these days? Huh.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and move on here to another guy who had injury issues last year. Came back in, did some stuff. San Francisco 49ers, Michael Crabtree was ADP of 15th. Rob, you got him at 12th. So let's see what you have to say about Mr. Crabtree.
Yeah, I'm pretty high in Crabtree this season. One thing I like about he's entering the final year of his rookie deal. He's going to have to, really put an onus on putting up some really good numbers so he can get that really lucrative contract next season. Yeah, you mentioned he came off Achilles injury. He did. He missed the first 11 games of last season recovering from that Achilles. But these injuries like ACLs and Achilles are not what they used to be. They can fully come back from these. We've seen it. There's examples of it. He's played. He came back and played the last 5 games of the season. He played very well. So because of that, we know he's going into 2014 100% healthy. I went back and looked at his numbers in 2012 and his full season with Kaepernick there, throwing in the football. Again, it is a run-first offense. They run first. They play good defense, and that's kind of their mantra, similar to Seattle. That's why those guys always battle it out there in the NFC Championship game. But when you go back and look at those, in 2014, Crabtree caught 85 balls for over 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. That would have put him 14th this past season as far as his numbers go. But what I really like about this, if you look back at the targets, the percentages of 2012 when he played that full season, of the 304 targets thrown by Kaepernick in that year, 155 of those went to Michael Crabtree. That's 51% for those of you out there doing the quick math. So over half the time, he's throwing the ball to Crabtree. He clearly loves this guy. They have a great chemistry. I think the addition of Stevie Johnson, I don't think it affects Crabtree numbers. I think it just kind of helps, it makes his own fantasy value pretty much irrelevant now, but it helps Kaepernick as a whole. It helps that whole offense. It might open things up even more a little bit for Crabtree. He's going to be so heavily targeted in 2014. So I've got him listed for 85 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 10 touchdowns in 2014, which will cement him, at the bottom end of my top 12.
Yeah, I'm kind of myself staying away from San Francisco's offense this year, but if I had to have one of their wide receivers, it would be Crabtree. I think he's going to be the man this year. I don't feel good about their offense this year. I don't know why. Just personal preference. But yeah, Jim, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I'm in the same thought process as you. I mean, Kaepernick and that whole situation. I think Crabtree's going to get a lot of catches. I think he's going to get, that 80, not quite 100 range. But I just personally don't see him blowing up. And I've seen him get hurt so many times. So that's all I'm going to really say to that. Yeah,
like I said, I've got him at 12th. If you can get him as your wide receiver 2, I think he'd be a fantastic wide receiver 2. All right, but we're going to move on to the most sensational rookie wide receiver of last season for sure. Unfortunately for us Broncos fans, he played for the AFC West Chargers. And this is one Mr. Keenan Allen. ADP in PPR leagues has him 12th going into this season. The Jimmer has him at 13th, just one spot below the ADP. So, Jimmer, I know he's a Chargers fan or Chargers player. We can put that behind us here. What do you think about Mr. Keenan Allen?
Yeah, let's talk about that first, man. He's a cocky little punk. I mean, I'm sorry. I've known him since he was back at Cal, and I just don't. Oh, God. There's part of me just hates him so much. So let's go back to history real quick. Josh Gordon had a massive breakthrough between his rookie year and his second year. Okay, he went from, top 20 to top 5, number 3 last year. I mean, that's a massive jump. Is Keenan Allen capable of that? Look at who's throwing to him. Phillip Rivers. Arguably the most inconsistent year-to-year quarterback we've ever seen. I hedged all my bets on him thinking that he would bounce back 2 years ago, and it cost me 3 leagues. All right, so just saying that, keeping that in mind, roughly all the pros and all the guys that are in fantasy world, they're in this 60-40 split where they think he's going to do better than his draft position, but everyone else is kind of saying, like, man, that's a huge gamble. We don't see it. 71 reception over 1,000 yards. He obviously did not play early on, so that's something to kind of consider. This year, I think he's going to be a bigger target, and I think he's going to be a little more focal point moving forward, so I don't think that's an issue going into this year, so you can't really look at the full history of that. When he was at Cal, he was the man, so he's kind of used to being that. Let's talk about the Sum ADP. They have him 9th overall, and that's the highest I've seen him, and that's in the 2nd round. That's a gutsy risk, in my opinion. I don't see him jumping into the top 10 round this year personally. I want to see a little bit more of him, so based on what happens this year, that I think will make my decision next year. So he's one of those guys that I believe is kind of a wait and see. If you feel good about him, great, draft him. You draft him. I'd rather watch him on your bench or your lineup than I would have him on mine. So that's my opinion. So Jay, thoughts?
I will draft him, Jim. I will, and you will be seeing him on my active roster the week I play you and spank your little ass all day.
Yeah, you'll play when he's hurt.
There's nothing little about his ass, all right?
Yeah, that is true.
He is a large man.
Listen, I'm liking Keenan Allen this year. I think he's going to be a pretty good wide receiver 2 with a possible upside of being a wide receiver 1. If people want to sleep on him and pick him up 12th or 13th, that's fine. I'm going to take him a little earlier than that, I think. I think he's gained the experience. I think Phillip Rivers is going to be just fine, and they're going to feed this kid the ball like crazy. So, yeah, I'm definitely going with him, Jim. You're going to regret not taking him.
Yeah, I've got him at 14th. I don't know if that ranking is just based on what I saw from him or if it's just kind of the hype on him. I mean, the guy, he did kill it in his rookie season. He wasn't a high-round draft pick the year before. Was that more about just his opportunity? They had some injuries there at the beginning of the season with the wide receivers at the Chargers. So, he's not going to hide from anyone this year, that's for sure. People know what he can do. He's going to be the number 1 guy in that team. The number 1, corner is going to be on him, double team, and so forth. So, I'm kind of cautiously optimistic. I hope he does well. I think it's just good for fantasy with a guy in his 2nd year, doing well and following up that rookie season with another good year. So, I wish all the best for him, except the 2 times a season that he plays my Broncos. So, we're going to move on to another guy who didn't reach expectations last season. It was really nothing to do with him personally. It was just the fact that his quarterback threw so many picks and was knocked down so much with a horrible offensive line that he couldn't really get much done. And that's one Mr. Victor Cruz, a guy who was definitely a wide receiver 1 and drafted as such a couple years back. His current ADP in PPR leagues is 22nd wide receiver off the board. Jay, you feel pretty close to that, having him ranked at 21st. So how optimistic and comfortable do you feel about drafting Victor Cruz as a potential low-end wide receiver 2 moving into the season?
Well, I don't know that I really want him as a wide receiver 2. I think he's going to be all right. He's still going to be used. His knee's supposedly fully recovered. The general manager has actually said that Cruz is a strictly inside receiver. And I think that actually helps Victor Cruz because Eli Manning, as we said, this guy spends a lot of time on his back and he's not having a lot of time to throw the ball, so he's still going to have to dump it off underneath a shit ton. So if this guy's inside, he's going to be seeing the ball a lot more than guys downfield because, frankly, Eli Manning's just not going to have the time to throw the ball down the field. So, yeah, low-end wide receiver 2 at best is what I see Cruz end up being just because I think the Giants are going to be so awful. I would probably feel more comfortable with him as a flex player, definitely, though. that's why I've got him just outside the top 20.
Jimmer, any thoughts on Victor Cruz this season?
He's one of those wild cards where you don't know, he might end up in the top 10 at the end of the season, which would just be everything that we've seen, everything that we heard, everything that we understand from our perspective. It says exactly what Jay's saying. He's a low-end wide receiver too, and he's realistically a flex player. But at the same time, I feel like he's a complete wild card where he literally could be a top 10 guy. And you're like, didn't see that coming. Thank God I had him on my team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got the talent level for it. We just got to see if Eli is going to pull it off. But really, that's enough about him anyway. I'm going to move on to T.Y. Hilton. He interests me a lot. Everybody in Indianapolis interests me a lot this year. Anybody that Andrew Luck's thrown the ball to is interesting to me. Rob, you've got him at 22nd. His ADP is 21st. So what are we expecting out of T.Y. this year?
Yeah, this is an interesting guy. Last year he had 82 receptions, over almost 1,100 yards and 5 touchdowns. But it was a weird season for the Colts. I mean, Reggie Wayne missed 9 games because of an ACL. They didn't have a whole lot behind him. T.Y. Hilton was kind of force-fed the ball, and he stepped up and delivered. That guy did well. But the interesting thing going into this season is that Reggie Wayne, I know he's 43 and a half years old next Monday, but the guy's still relevant. The guy's a stud. He's been doing it year and year and year again. Again, ACLs are not what they used to be. He's going to be a possession receiver. Probably won't run a ton of mid-level routes, but shorter routes and be a possession guy, kind of like maybe Anquan Boldin is for the 49ers. But they also added a guy, Hakeem Nicks, and I don't know what to think about Hakeem Nicks. He used to be a wide receiver 3 or so years ago. He's been plagued with some foot injuries as well, but he's coming supposedly healthy into this coming season. So you've got those two guys, the addition and coming back for Wayne to add into the mix with T.Y. Hilton. So, I think, I don't think Hilton is going to see a ton of double teams because of this, which is good for him. And what I actually see happening here, is I see T.Y. Hilton playing that downfield threat role, very similar to Deshaun Jackson. I looked up these guys' metrics, and they are almost identical in size. They're both 5'10". They're both about 190 pounds or so. But the funny thing is, which I wouldn't have assumed this, but T.Y. Hilton actually ran a faster 40 time than Deshaun Jackson did back in his rookie season. So, and he's, of course, a lot younger. So he's very dynamic, very quick. I think he's going to be used more of a downfield threat. So I think at the end of the day, T.Y. Hilton's catches might go down because of Reggie Wayne coming back and the addition of Hakeem Nicks. But I think his yards and touchdowns could definitely go up, especially with Andrew Luck throwing him the ball. So at the end of the day, I see T.Y. Hilton as about 70 receptions, a little down from last year, but I see him at 1,150 yards or so and about 9 touchdowns, which to me puts him as a low-end wide receiver 2. And if you can get him as your wide receiver 3 / flex position, I think that'd be a fantastic spot for him in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can get that guy as a flex play, man, you're doing really well. He's going to be fun to watch this year, too. I think the whole Colts offense is going to be really fun to watch this year. But I would definitely rank him in the top 20, I think, as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, Jim, any thoughts on T.Y. going in this year?
I'll get into it with Reggie Wayne, and we'll talk about Pep Hamilton then, the offense coordinator.
Okay. Well, let's move along then to the guy that the Jimmer just simply can't get enough of. I mean, man crush doesn't even get to the point that the Jimmer is on this guy. Mr. Cordell Patterson. I mean, just a beast over there in the cold realms of Minnesota. ADP has got him in PPR leagues at 17th. The Jimmer, I don't know, you have him at 19th. That just doesn't even seem right. You should at least have him at 16th to get under the ADP. So, but anyway, what do you think about this dynamic rookie of last season going into his second season there in Minnesota with possibly and hopefully a new quarterback?
Party people! I love Cordell Patterson. I think he's great. I think he was a big steal for me this last year. He's one of those guys where, man, you just hope that there's an actual quarterback throwing to him. Is Teddy Bridgewater that guy? Hell no. But is there a chance for him to doing okay? Yes, I think he's still going to get a lot of catches. And quite frankly, they're making offensive plays for you. Anytime they're making offensive plays for you, I mean, you're going to get the ball. I mean, he's going to score, at least a punt return, at least a kick return this year, if not a couple times. He's just one of those rare talents that is so elusive and he's so good that, you can't help but do it. So realistically, outside of all my thoughts and all that process, he has the wide receiver 1 talent. He has the skill set to be that, but he's definitely a wide receiver 2 with just massive upside. And that's my opinion. So again, that's why ADP has him at 17th, and that's why I'm kind of a little hesitant, is because of the quarterback situation. I think he's still going to get 1,000 yards. I think he's still looking at 70 catches this year, and that's not completely unrealistic, and especially in this league. I mean, the other big consideration you have to have is Adrian Peterson. If Adrian Peterson stays healthy, it's going to be a lot harder for him to get these numbers. If Adrian Peterson doesn't stay healthy, my God, pick this guy up, trade for him, because his fantasy value is going to skyrocket if ADP doesn't stay healthy. So you got to look at the scoring for your teams with this guy, because I mean, if you can get a point or two off of him, or 6 points, every other game on some punt return for a touchdown, that's awesome. That's what he's capable of. So that's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, I don't quite have the creepiness attachment that Jim does to Cordell Patterson. I've got him outside the top 20. I just don't think Minnesota's going to be all that great outside Adrian Peterson guys this year. I don't see anybody up there really making much of an impact on anybody's roster. So I'm kind of staying away from him unless it's Adrian Peterson. That's the only person in Minnesota that I will be having anything to do with. Sorry, Jim. I'm sorry, man.
Fine.
Yeah, I feel similar. I've got him I've got him in tier 3, actually. I think people are way too high on this guy. He won't be on any of my teams, not because I don't think he's potentially dynamic. It's just he's going to go way before I'd be willing to take him. Bridgewater, I mean, it can't get any worse. I mean, Matt Castle and Christian Ponder, we all know Ponder's only there because of his wife, because she's hot. But,
gorgeous.
Yeah. But so I think the quarterback play can only get better, but still at the end of the day, him running around the field getting handoffs and punt returns and all that sort of thing, it just probably to me increases his chance of getting hurt. And I just, he won't be in any of my teams, but he is dynamic. He's an exciting guy to watch. I'm just interested. I'd just rather sit out this season on him and see kind of what he does, and maybe take a harder look at him in 2015. So that's what we have for tier 2. We're going to quickly discuss some tier 3 wide receivers. And these are kind of guys in the realm of Jeremy Maclin, Deshaun Jackson, Emmanuel Sanders, Golden Tate, Hakeem Nicks, some of the rookies like Sammy Watkins. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the guy. I personally just can't stand this guy, Deshaun Jackson. I think he's a punk, and I just never liked him. And anyway, that's a story for another day. But ADP and PPR leagues has him going at 23rd off the board. Jay has him going exactly at 23 off the board. I don't think any of us think he's going to put up his career numbers of last year. One, because he actually played all the games, but now he's on a different team. So how do you think his fantasy production is going to pan out this season, Jay, in Washington, D.C.?
Meh. I don't know. We'll see. Look, he's going to an offense that passed it about 100 more times last season than his previous team did. But I actually don't see his numbers improving. You're right. Look, last season that was the best he's ever done. That was his best numbers last year. And I don't think Gruden is going to have to lean on Deshaun Jackson in the passing game the way that Chip Kelly did last year in Philadelphia with the injuries they had to Maclin, and they didn't really have much of a wide receiver core there last year. I think he can be highly productive. He already has been, but I think he's more a tool in an offense rather than a key player. So he's not going to just be like the highlighted wide receiver that some people think he might be. I don't think his targets are going to increase. He's paired opposite of a guy who was nearly the most heavily targeted player in the NFL last year in Pierre Garçon. So I think he finished the season around 70 catches, maybe 1,100 yards. I think Garçon and Jordan Reed are way more viable red zone targets. So Deshaun's touchdown are going to have to come from those long, exciting plays we all love to see. But I don't think he's going to get too many of them. I think, with a running quarterback like Robert Griffin, you just don't see as many downfield passes as you do with a guy like Nick Foles who stands in the pocket. So I think he's going to finish the season barely staying in the top 25. I think he's going to see a significant drop-off from his numbers last year.
Yeah, again, like you just said, I mean, Maclin was out last year. They really had no one else to go to. And the surprising thing for Deshaun last year was the fact that he actually played 16 games. He's a very small guy. He gets concussed. He gets hurt. I don't see him, A, staying healthy the whole season like last year. I think that was an anomaly. And B, there's a lot more weapons in Washington's offense now than there was in Philly last year with the injuries they had. So, RG3 benefits from this for sure. Alfred Morris benefits from this for sure. But as far as Deshaun Jackson's numbers in fantasy, the only way is down. So I see him, and don't draft him anything above a wide receiver 2 for sure. Definitely wide receiver 3 flex, and just hope he hits on the week that you have to play him.
Yeah, Jim, you got any thoughts on Deshaun Jackson?
Yeah, if he falls to me on the waiver wire, I'll pick him up.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we're going to move on to actually Deshaun Jackson's former teammate, and the guy we were just talking about. That was a reason that Deshaun Jackson had good numbers last year. Being out was Jeremy Maclin. His ADP is 30th. Rob, you've got him 7 spots higher than that at 23rd. So let's hear the reasons for that.
I am. I'm feeling pretty good about Maclin. I mean, the guy, you're right, is coming back from an injury. He tore his right ACL in July prior to last year's season. So he had the entire, that offseason and the whole last season to rehab from that. And again, these injuries are not what they used to be. And let's remember, guys, that Maclin was the number 1 wide receiver on that team, even when Deshaun Jackson was there. He was always the wide receiver 1 for them. He's been very consistent over the past 3 seasons. After being a rookie in 2010 through 2012, across those 3 seasons, he averaged almost 70 receptions a year, 900 yards, and 7 touchdowns, which in fantasy points would have put him at about 29 last season in a PPR. But I think with the loss of Deshaun, they're kind of flip-flopping roles now to where Deshaun's going to definitely be the main guy. They did draft a couple rookies. Jordan Matthews was drafted in the 2nd round, and then Josh Huff in later rounds. But really the only thing behind him since Deshaun is gone, is the racist Riley Cooper and a bunch of rookies. I mean, frankly, there's just not a whole lot of talent behind him. So I think that alone, he's going to get a ton of looks, a ton of catches. What really intrigues me about him, though, guys, is that, and we have to keep an eye on this, is that he opted to sign a 1-year deal as opposed to the longer deal that they were trying to get him to sign. To me, that bodes well for his confidence. He sees this as a play-it season. If he does well, he'll be able to get a more lucrative, longer-term contract down the road. So I think that makes me feel really good about him. He's definitely healthy. So at the end of the day, I see him as getting right around 80 receptions, almost 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns going into 2014, which again puts him, if you can get him as your wide receiver 3, which I think you can, based on ADP, that would just be fantastic value for Maclin this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Macklin's just going to see a lot of targets. There isn't much behind him in the depth chart, so he's just going to be force-fed the ball. As long as he can stay healthy, the guy is going to be worth owning, especially in PPR. Those guys, I kind of see him as somebody that's going to get the amount of targets that somebody like an Antonio Brown or a Julian Edelman got in New England. These guys just got thrown the ball a ton. That's why they were so good in PPR. They score you 12 points a week just out of receptions. So definitely good call on Jeremy Maclin there.
Yeah, so we're going to move on to back to the Colts offense, we want to put a lot of these guys in here that were coming off injuries but are definitely good players and get our thoughts into the audience as to what we think they're going to do. So Reggie Wayne just has been a beast for every team he's played for the Colts, essentially, with different quarterbacks and such. It doesn't matter. The guy just catches a ton of balls, very consistent. He's been playing in the league for forever. But he is coming off an ACL, and even though I keep saying those injuries aren't what they used to be, he's still older, definitely. So what do we think, Jimmer? ADP has him at 35th PPR, which is the lowest he's ever gone, I'm sure, in past drafts. You have him at 25th, 10 spots higher than the average draft position. So why are you so high on Reggie Wayne going into this season?
Well, all the fantasy guys are in the same boat I am. He's just polarizing. I mean, most people, they don't know what's going to happen. He could go one way or the other. He could, wash out into fantasy negligence and essentially be out of the league, or he could do 1,000 yards. And let's look at what happened last year. Last year, he was literally, before he got hurt in the 7th game, he was on track for 1,000 yards and 80 catches. I mean, think about that for a second. That's a whole different fantasy bracket. I mean, he's one of those high-risk, high-reward guys, and that's why I have him so high. I don't know. He says he's ahead of his health schedule, and with the whole injury, and I mean, who knows? Every athlete says that, but honestly, between you and me, I think he's going to put up 1,000 yards, and I think he's can easily be a top 25 receiver, if not higher. So, and since I said I would talk about it, Pep Hamilton in that offensive coordinator role, they don't throw the ball much. They really don't until they need to. And that's in the 4th quarter, and that's where Andrew Luck has just shined. He is so good. He's so talented. He makes all the right reads. He finds a guy like Reggie Wayne more than often than not because he knows that he can throw it to him. He knows that he can catch it. Can you say that about T.Y. Hilton? Not as much as you can about Reggie Wayne. Reggie Wayne will catch the ball. So, back to you guys.
Yeah, the only reason I stay away from Reggie Wayne is because he's so damn old. Call me ageist, if you will, but somebody that's that age in the NFL, he's gonna get banged around, he's gonna get hurt, and Nick being there now is gonna add in just another weapon for Luck to look for and throw the ball to. I think that Reggie Wayne is gonna fade into fantasy irrelevance, and it's gonna start this year. Rob, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I'm just cautious on the guy again. I mean, he's going to get his catches. He'll probably catch 80 balls just because he's Reggie Wayne, and I think Luck's going to kind of rely on him. But it's just going to be shorter routes. He's not going to get as many yards, not going to get as many touchdowns. So I think he's a flex player guy you plug in on a bye week for Mr. Reggie Wayne. So we're going to move on to a guy that both the Cushman and I are super high on this year. I mean, this guy could really blow the top off and just be a beast going into his 3rd season. And this is Michael Floyd. ADP in PPR leagues is 26th. Jay, you have him at 20th. You have him inside your top 20. I've got him at 24. And he did it last year. He's a beast in Arizona there. With the quarterback's always kind of a question. But what do you think, and why are you so high on Michael Floyd going into 2014?
Well, look, Larry Fitzgerald, God bless that guy. He's on the downside of his career. It looks like age. You're going to catch up with him. I mean, he's, it's sad. He's one of the most talented guys in the history of the game. But on the other side of the field, now you've got Michael Floyd. This guy's career is just beginning to blossom. 6'2", 220. The guy is a beast. He's already made progress in his first 2 years in the league. I think he's going to have a breakout year this year. That was a first-round pick out of Notre Dame. He's got all the tools to be an elite receiver. He's just, we've been waiting for him to kind of put it together. Last season, he finished the year with the most receiving yards on the team. That's just a little over 1,000 yards, despite having 24 less targets and 17 less receptions than Larry Fitzgerald. So the important question here really is, can Carson Palmer stay upright and make the throws that he needs to make to get this guy the ball? I think Palmer's going to have better protection this year. He signed a free agent left tackle from Oakland. They also got a guy coming off their draft last year that was a first-round pick that was injured, an offensive lineman, so he should have better protection this year. I think that Michael Floyd, dude, this guy could in all honesty, I think he could end up as a top 10 wide receiver. I've got him at 20 right now. I'm gonna keep my eye on him and see what happens. But I see him getting around 80 catches, 1,300 yards, and maybe 8 touchdowns this year. The guy's gonna keep your eye on him. If you can steal him late, do it. Rob.
Yeah, I mean, I'm high on him too. I think he's kind of my breakout wide receiver this coming into this season. Their offensive line can't get any worse. They've tried to shore that up. Palmer's, he's an older pro, but he's still a pro. I mean, he's still going to get the job done as long as he can stay on his feet. I mean, Floyd already outproduced Larry Fitzgerald in yards last season, even with all their offensive line issues and with Carson throwing the ball. So I think he only moves up from here, and I think Larry Fitzgerald, given just who he is and name recognition, and he still is a very, very, very solid player, still going to get the top corner most of the time and get most of the double teams. I think Floyd really breaks out. And you're going to be able to draft him, as your wide receiver 3 and flex position type player, and I think that's just incredible value.
Yeah, Jim, you got any thoughts on on how high we are on Michael Floyd? You seem to not agree with it.
I just hate Notre Dame players.
Oh, screw you!
That's relevant. All right,
and we'll move on to Mr. Hakeem Nicks coming from the Giants over to the Colts. I like this, Rob. Do you like this? Do you think that this guy's going to have a good season with Andrew Luck throwing him the ball?
Well, ADP has got him at 39th in PPR leagues. I've got him at 38th. First of all, let me just say, did either of you, is it only me, or did you guys think this guy's bigger than only 6 foot tall? I mean, for some reason, I had this guy in my head.
I always thought he was 6'3".
I did too. I thought he was this huge, monstrous wide receiver. And I've been watching him for years, of course, but I looked at his actual measurements and so forth. He's only 6 foot tall, which was just, doesn't mean a whole lot, but just kind of curious to me. But anyway, in the last 2 seasons, he has played 88% of those games, but I think, he's playing hurt in a lot of those games with those crazy lower extremity issues that scares me about Julio Jones. But in those games, he's only averaged 54 receptions, under 800 yards. And just a couple touchdowns in those seasons. So it's just his production has been really bad, and maybe that's because he is playing hurt, to the detriment of his own team or his former team and to us fantasy owners. But last year he finished 48th wide receiver in PPR. Obviously not great. He's just basically wide receiver fodder with high name recognition. But I don't know that his feet are ever going to be healthy enough for him to put up the years that he put up a few years ago. Now he's playing along T.Y. Hilton alongside of him, and he's just this dynamic younger guy. Reggie Wayne's coming back. So you've got Hakeem Nicks as the wide receiver 3 on that team, and I frankly just don't know what to do with this guy. I mean, he signed a 1-year deal, and that wasn't of his choosing. It was of the team's. So they're just probably going to see what you can do type of contract. Don't have a lot of faith in the guy. I'm going to go ahead and, just because of what he used to be, I'm going to log him down for 65 receptions, maybe 900 yards, and 3 or 4 touchdowns. But again, this is a flex play at best, wide receiver play at depth, and maybe Andrew Luck can make him more relevant than that. But I'm just not sold.
Yeah, I liked it, especially when I first saw it happen. I liked it. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, it's just too many freaking mouths to feed. And I think he's the least talented mouth there. The only way I think he is really relevant is if Reggie Wayne gets injured again. Then I think that Nicks is going to be worth having. Other than that, probably not. Definitely, relegated to the basement of flex plays.
Well, yeah. Let me give you a litmus test here, Jay. All right. Do we think Andrew Luck is going to throw more than 4,000 yards? Yes or no?
Possibly. Yeah.
Possibly. Realistically, probably not. Rob?
I think he's going to throw a little more than we're accustomed to seeing, even in that same.
Pep Hamilton offense, 60% run, 40% pass. Think about it.
Yeah.
That's my only thing. And yes, I know we're talking a lot about Indianapolis this year or this show, but that's my only thing, man. I just don't see how he's going to get more than. There's no way he gets over 1,000 yards unless Reggie Wayne goes down. And so I think 900 is a little high. I think he's more in the 750 range. He's completely a flex play. fill in if something happens.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, that's going to do it for our show today. Our thoughts on wide receivers going into 2014. So on our next show, we're going to be breaking down and ranking that difficult mid-tier quarterback section, the tight end sections for 2014, and comparing our rankings with current ADP on fantasyfootballcalculator.com. So tune in to see how we match up. Again, we're live every 2 weeks in the off season. We'll be going to every week once the season gets closer. So tune in a couple weeks for our next live hangout. In the meantime, you can go to redzonewarriors.com where you can watch previous episodes, see our rankings, and subscribe to the show via iTunes. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and tweet us your fantasy football questions at Red Zone Warriors. So for the Cushman and the Jimmer, I am Rob the Commish Smith. And remember that if you are taking a fantasy offseason, then you are already losing. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.